All right, everybody, welcome to the power of presence, kicking anxiety's butt. So let's go over a handful of goals for the day. The first goal would be to learn how your thoughts impact your well-being, which may sound obvious, but again, we're going to do some experiential activities today, and you're going to get a better idea of some of the thoughts that are zooming through you. We're also going to grasp the experience of presence, and we're going to practice it. Some of you may or may not be aware of the concept of presence, but we will certainly dive in a little deeper today. You are going to become the observer of your thoughts. We will certainly talk much more about that. And then we're going to develop your skills to be able to monitor your thoughts, change your thoughts, and begin making those thoughts work for you. So again, in the subtitle, this is called Kicking Anxiety's Butt. But one of the things we have to be aware of when we talk about anxiety is that as a general rule, anxiety is not the problem. Anxiety is the result of other problems, okay? So my hope is by the end of this 45 minutes or so, you will be able to experience diminished anxiety, depression, stress, feelings of being overwhelmed, and you're going to have an increased ability to manage your thoughts, to become more mindful, more present, and create more positive outcomes in your life, which I think it's fair to say we would all subscribe to. So let's dive in a little bit. Let's talk about our thoughts for just a second here. I'm assuming everybody on this webinar can relate to the fact that oftentimes we feel like our thoughts are just running rampant. Our thoughts can be overwhelming to us. It's very easy for us to get lost in our thoughts, and that can lead to anxiety. And so when I talk about anxiety, I always make the assumption that people know what that means, but that may not be the case. I think that anxiety's layperson term would be worry, right? Oftentimes when somebody is experiencing anxiety, they're feeling palpitations, an increased heart rate. They might have racing thoughts. They might experience, even though they might not be aware of it, extremely shallow breathing. They might start to perspire, right? Sweat on the forehead. Other signs of anxiety, a classic one is that sort of nervousness in the stomach, right? Butterflies. Maybe your foot just can't stop tapping no matter what, right? You've got a tremendous amount of nervous energy. That's just kind of a generalized way of discussing anxiety. Now, what I want to say about anxiety is, although this is not always the case, and I can't verify this statistic, I would say with a high degree of confidence that 95% of anxiety is actually the result of our thoughts. And so in the world of psychology, we have this thing called the cognitive triangle. And the way this boils down is we're going to look at thoughts at the top of this triangle, and thoughts are going to be the genesis for our outcomes. In other words, nothing the human race is able to accomplish or create or achieve is possible without it first originating as a thought. And so we have this thing called the cognitive triangle, and I think everybody's going to be able to relate to this to one degree or another. But the way it works is you have a thought. You may or may not be aware of that thought. And that particular thought affects the way you feel. And then depending on the way you feel, which was influenced by the thought, that can also influence your actions. And based on those actions, it's kind of a giant feedback loop, right? And it feeds back into your thoughts. So I'm going to give you a real basic example here. But the thought for this example is, I should try to manipulate my body's natural shape and size. So I guess an initial thought might be, I'm not satisfied with my body and I need to change. That's the seed, right? That's the genesis. That's the thought. Having that thought can lead to feelings of insecurity, being defeated, feeling inadequate, hopeless, angry. And when we have that thought and feel that particular way about that thought, it then results in a particular behavior, which this example means restricting diet or emotionally overeating or maybe working out to an unhealthy degree, right? Um, if if that thought and those feelings and that behavior don't lead to desired outcomes, then that again feeds back into the feedback loop and creates an additional thought of, I was right. I hate my body. My body won't change. My body will never be the way I want, which leads to increased feelings of insecurity, negative feelings, which then transition into negative behaviors. A great example of this might be, I'm assuming there are a lot of students on this webinar. So the thought might be that I'm never going to pass English class. I'm never going to graduate from TCC. I'm not going to make it through this semester, which makes you feel down, right? It makes you feel sad. It makes you feel anxious. When you feel sad and anxious and are telling yourself you may not be able to graduate this semester, complete your class, get a passing grade, the behavior is you're less likely to apply yourself, right? To push yourself. And if you don't push yourself in school, you won't do well in school, which then feeds back into the thought, I'm not doing well in school. I was right. I knew I couldn't do this, which then, again, big feedback loop, contributes to increased feelings of inadequacy, right? Which contributes to increased behavior or a lack of behavior in terms of not doing your homework. So all of this stuff feeds itself. It's one giant feedback loop. Your thoughts affect your feelings, which affect your behavior, which then influence your thoughts again. It's a cycle. So why are we talking about this? Well, I think it's fair to say that everybody's probably heard of subliminal messages, the conscious, the subconscious. As a general rule, most human beings aren't terribly aware of their thoughts. We might start to feel a certain way throughout the day, like sad or anxious, but we might not be aware of the triggering thought, the thought that contributed to the feeling, which then altered our behavior throughout the day, again, feeding back into more negative thoughts. As a general rule, we typically don't have that kind of awareness. And why is that important? Well, there are a lot of things in this world and this life and our experiences that are beyond our control, 100% guaranteed. There are things in this world that you can't do anything about. However, your thoughts are one of the few things that you have complete control over. If you think about that for a second, no one can change your thoughts. No matter what anybody else does to you, you have complete autonomy over the thoughts that you choose to indulge or you create in your head. People can influence you, circumstances, environments can influence you, but no one can change that thought except for you. Now, the challenge is if we're not aware of the thoughts in our head, then we also lack awareness on how those thoughts are impacting our feelings and impacting our behavior, right? So one of the goals of this seminar is to increase our awareness on our thoughts. So how do we do that? Well, there's a number of ways to go about this, but what I challenge you to is to take on an alternate identity, if you will. You need to be able to differentiate yourself from your thoughts. You need to become the observer from your thoughts. Separate yourself from your thoughts. Again, this is something we can all relate to. When we're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, those thoughts can flood us. They can consume us, right? To a degree, they literally own our well-being. it's very easy for us to get so engulfed in our thoughts that we literally lose control of the thoughts that are circulating through our brain, right? It's almost as if we're drowning in those thoughts. And so one of the ways to become the observer, to differentiate yourself from your thoughts, is to recognize that you are not your brain. You use your brain. Your brain is a tool. It's there to serve you. It's there to help you navigate this life, right? This human experience. You are not your thoughts. Your thoughts are generated by your brain. We know these things. We know we're not our thoughts, but it's very difficult for us to identify as something separate from our thoughts. And so, what are you? Well, you could say you're the entity that encompasses your body, right? You're the animator of your body, if you will. So if you're not your thoughts, the question I pose to you is, what are you? And that may or may not be easy for some people to answer. I'm going to pause for just a second, and I'm going to say to you, if you're not your thoughts, what are you? And I'm curious what comes to mind before we move on to the next slide. You don't need to respond right now, but I'm just curious if there's an immediate reaction or immediate thought in response to that question. So let's look at it this way. Here's a different way to identify with your true self if you're not identifying as a thought. And these are some examples of what people have shared with me. Some of these teeter on spirituality, some of these teeter on psychology, some of these teeter on science. But these are examples of what some people might describe as their true self, the animator of their body, the force that dwells within their material physical body, right? And the idea is that I want you to look at this list or pick something that you can identify with. The most common one that I hear in my office is probably soul, which has a spirituality connotation. I also hear energy, consciousness, and awareness quite a bit. But again, the idea is you're identifying with something separate from your thoughts. And the idea is this: if you can identify as something separate from the thoughts inside your head, you then have the ability to become the observer of the thoughts, which allow you to be more aware of the thoughts that are circulating through your brain, that are being generated by your brain. We're going to come back to the benefit of being more aware of those thoughts here in a bit. So again, what's the word that you can best identify with? What's the word that you can use as sort of a way to identify your true self and separate yourself from your thoughts, right? Which one of these words allows you to identify as a separate entity that is then able to observe your thoughts? Okay, we're going to pause on that for just a second, and we're going to talk about this concept of being present. So, and I need to forewarn everybody here, I get passionate about this and I get out of order, and I'm not used to following slides, and what I really want to do is just ramble to you and use my hands to make these crazy gestures and look you in the face and be able to make sure that you're getting this, that you're resonating with this. I can't right now, so bear with me, and I appreciate that. But when we talk about the power of presence, being present means that you are existing mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically in the present moment. That sounds a little bit ridiculous to say out loud, but as a general rule, very, very few human beings are ever present. And one of the leading factors in that is our mind. And so here's the humbling piece of this. I'm going to venture to say that everybody on this webinar, myself included, has a tendency to be completely controlled by our mind. And here's what I mean by that. For however many years you've been alive, as a general rule, your mind has been able to do whatever it wants. It has been on cruise control. We generally have very little awareness of the thoughts that are being generated through our mind, the impact that they're having on us, and as a result, your thoughts have had carte blanche. They have been able to do whatever they wanted. They've been able to think, generate whatever they've wanted. Again, as a general rule, up until today, you've had very little influence on that. Why is that a problem? Well, one, you're not in control of your thoughts. But let's kind of look at this from a philosophical, experiential perspective. Your mind does not have the ability to be present. And let me expound on that a little bit. When someone is truly present, that means that they are completely immersed in the present moment. If your thoughts, your brain is controlling you and able to do it at once, your brain, as a general rule when it comes to psychology, has the ability to do really three things. Your brain is masterful at collecting memories, right? So oftentimes, everybody can relate to this. You're sitting at your desk, you're sitting at home, you're driving, you're hanging out with a loved one, friends, whatever, and your brain is dwelling on the past. It's a master at it. Our brain has a tendency to go back into the past. Sometimes, depending on the experience, those memories can seem so exceptionally real, right? It's almost like a flashback to a time in your past. Your brain also has the ability to anticipate the future. The problem with that is the future hasn't materialized yet. So all your brain is doing is anticipating different scenarios. Now, again, I think we can all relate to this. When our brain anticipates different scenarios, our brain generally tends to default to potential negative outcomes, right? When we anticipate things, when we try to project what might happen in the future, that tends to be a source of anxiety for us. And then third, our brain is absolutely wonderful at literally hijacking whatever we're doing and kind of taking us on this alternate reality, this alternate presence, if you will. And the classic example I give, and everybody can relate to this, is when you're daydreaming. When you're driving a car and all of a sudden you have that moment where your head just sort of shakes and you realize, oh my goodness, I have no idea how I got here. I'm sitting at a red light at an intersection and I've been daydreaming about whatever, right? Shopping at the grocery store, whatever, doing homework, a made-up fantasy with a friend, you're out on an adventure. You have completely lost touch with reality. And I say all that to you because your brain is a tool, right? It's there to serve you. Your brain has multiple functions in this world. Without it, our lives, our quality of life would be drastically different, right? But what your brain doesn't have the ability to do is be present. And so anytime your brain is on cruise control, it's taking you away from the present moment. Now, what's the big deal? Well, here's the big deal. The only time that you can ever truly exist and experience life is in the present moment. Meaning, to my knowledge, no one's developed a time machine yet. You cannot travel back in the past. You cannot experience the past again. You can have memories about the past. You cannot travel into the future. The only thing you are capable of ever experiencing is the now. And when tomorrow materializes, which is the future right now, when it materializes tomorrow, you can only experience it in the now, the ever-present now. And if we don't develop the ability to quiet our minds, calm our minds, differentiate ourselves from our thoughts, we will never have the ability to be present. We will always be doing something in the present moment with a giant cloud of thoughts engulfing us. And if you really stop and think about it, there are very few things in your life that you do without having thoughts sort of interfering, right? It's almost like it's a constant filter that's always preventing you from being completely present. Now, most of you, whether you're aware of it or not, probably have experiences of being present. The kind of common term to describe being present is finding the flow or being in the zone, right? These are popular ways to kind of explain the concept of presence. And what they're really saying is you're so engulfed in the present moment that literally for seconds or for minutes or for the duration of a professional game, if you're an athlete, your mind stops the obsessive thinking. It's popular in video games, right? People are gamers, and all of a sudden they have this sense of relief because they're no longer experiencing overwhelming thoughts, right? You're doing something so intensely in the present moment that you're no longer being interfered with by your thoughts. You're no longer experiencing the now through the filter of your thoughts. So I hope that makes sense to some extent. So the question is, if being present means that we're experiencing this moment with the absence of thought, with the absence of influence of our mind, which is either dwelling on the past, anticipating the future, or creating an alternate reality in sort of this daydream, all of that stuff takes us away from the present. How do we do that? How do we become present? So let's talk about that for a few minutes. There's a popular term in the world of counseling and psychology, and they're called grounding techniques. And we're going to look at these a little bit more closely today. Grounding techniques essentially are this. They are techniques, things you can do that are supposed to ground you in the present moment. And what that means is they're getting you out of your head, they're getting you out of your body, out of your thoughts, and they're grounding you in the present moment, your external environment. When you're more connected to your external environment, by law, you're less connected to your thoughts and you're more grounded in the present moment. Again, what's the benefit to you? Well, you experience less anxiety, depression, stress, feelings of being overwhelmed because your brain is not on high drive generating all those thoughts. Okay, so a couple things here. I'm going to ask you to follow along with me as best you can. I'm going to go somewhat quickly just for the sake of time because I really want us to have enough time for our meditation. But here's a basic grounding technique. And I'm hoping everybody can black out your screen if it's not blacked out yet, so that you're not distracted by other faces. Hopefully all you see is my slide. So the first grounding technique we're going to try is observing your environment. Now, I'm going to make the assumption that people are kicking it on their couch, sitting in an office chair, somewhere in an apartment, a house. If you're one of the lucky, you're sitting outside in the beautiful sun. But the idea right now is to do nothing but observe your environment. Sounds simple, sounds easy. Here's where the catch happens. Anybody can look around this room. What I want you to do is attempt to observe your environment without letting thought interfere. You will fail. I will fail. It's okay. You are going to become the observer, the other entity you identify with that now has the ability to observe your environment and also become more aware of your thoughts. So we're going to try this for 30 seconds. And literally, your goal is to do this. Your goal is to look around this room that I'm assuming you've been in a million times before. You could probably describe this room very well. But this time, you're going to look around this room as if it's the first time you've ever truly paid attention to the environment you're sitting in. but your mind's going to try to intervene. It's guaranteed. So when your mind intervenes, you're now the observer of your thoughts. You have awareness of that thought. You observe the thought. You gently let it pass. And then you focus your attention back on the external environment. A few more things to talk about before we try it. Your mind is going to label everything in the room you're sitting in. That's going to be thoughts intervening. So for example, I'm sitting here with a laptop and I've got a glass of water. When I look around my environment, I see glass, I see water, I see a pen, I see paper. My mind has already intervened. What I need to be doing is attempting to observe my environment without allowing my brain to put labels on it, just seeing things for the way they are. And when you do this, if you're able to grasp it, you're going to literally see things as if you're viewing them in high definition, meaning you're going to see more clarity, you're going to see more detail. You might notice little nuances like light reflecting off of things. You might notice the brightness or how vivid certain colors are. Again, the whole point is you're doing this without being clouded or without having your attention be detracted by your thoughts, right? So let's take 30 seconds. Again, look around your room. And every time that you notice a thought intervening, an image, a saying, a phrase, a memory, become the observer of that thought. Notice the thought, allow it to slowly drift by, and then bring your attention back to your environment, observing all the details you can about your surroundings. We're going to try this for 30 seconds. Go for it. Okay, so a couple observations from my end. I started to look around my room. I'm sitting in front of a window, and I had the thought, wow, that window is really dirty. I probably should clean it. It hasn't been cleaned since I bought this house 10 years ago. I had the thought that I need to monitor my watch more closely to make sure I don't waste any time. My point being that there were a number of sly, subtle thoughts that immediately tried to intervene when I was attempting to observe my external environment. The beauty of being the observer of your thoughts is when you're able to observe the thought, you've automatically become present. Anytime you become mindful of a thought, aware of a thought, the observer of the thought, you automatically become grounded in the present moment. So when people say it's very difficult for them to manage their thoughts, minimize their thoughts, stay present, I always want to remind people that's actually a positive sign. The minute you become aware of your thought is the minute you actually become present. So we're going to come back to this a little bit later. I'm sure there are questions. I'm sure there are concerns. I'll have some contact information at the end in case you want to talk about this in more detail. But now we're going to try something a little different. It's still a grounding technique. Only this time, I'm going to ask everybody that's participating to close your eyes. Now, you don't have the distraction of sight right now. And what you're going to do is you're going to spend 30 seconds and you're going to listen intently to your external environment without thought. Now, what's guaranteed is that a thought will pop into your head. That's okay. It's normal. It's natural. Let's say you're 30 years old. For 30 years old, your brain has never been told. Your brain has never made an attempt by you to be ignored. Your brain naturally wants to intervene. That's okay. Your goal is to listen intently to your environment. And every time a thought or an image pops up, you become aware of the thought. You become the observer of the thought. You allow that thought to gently pass by, and you bring your attention back to everything you can hear in the present moment. No judgment, no labels. You just intently focus on the sounds of your external environment. We're going to try that for 30 seconds. Go for it. Okay, so depending on your environment, everybody probably heard something different. In my environment, I heard the heater kick on, and my thoughts automatically generated thoughts of that's the sound of the heater. It's very, very subtle, but it's an example of the brain interfering, right? I literally had the thought, I wonder when the last time I changed my heater filters or my air conditioning unit filters. My thoughts are constantly attempting to intervene. When that thought arises, you just become aware of the thought, observe it, allow it to gently pass, and bring your attention back to the present moment. You can also do this with your sense of smell. I tend to like this with my eyes closed, and you just intently use your sense of smell to pick up all the nuances that are in your environment. And then another great one is your sense of touch. And you just spend a minute. I'm sitting in a chair and I'm sitting at a wooden table, and I've had this table for probably 20 years. I can tell you that I have never, ever attempted to lay my hands on this table, or maybe it's your chair right now, and feel its texture, feel the temperature, feel the nuances of the surface around you. When you do that, all of these things, again, they're designed to get you into your external environment. Now, let's talk about two personality types real quick. And I hate to categorize people into two types, so these are definitely generalizations, but most people are probably familiar with extroverts and introverts, right? Well, extroverts, as a general rule, tend to be much better at grounding techniques and getting outside of their thoughts to diminish anxiety, feelings of stress, and being overwhelmed. Why? Because extroverts get energized from being more connected to the external environment, right? Introverts, we tend to have a bigger problem. Why? Because we recharge, we energize by going inward, right? That's very precious time for introverts. Introverts, as a general rule, tend to get lost in their thoughts a little bit more than extroverts, because that's where introverts naturally go to sort of escape the strain or the stress of being overstimulated by the external environment. All that to say, this might be a little bit more challenging for introverts than extroverts, but by no means beyond your abilities, right? But again, being an introvert, it might be more difficult to calm those thoughts. Perfectly normal, perfectly natural. Your idea, the goal right now is to become the observer of the thoughts. Okay, so when do we do grounding techniques? Well, let's come back to that. I'm assuming I haven't lost everybody. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take a little journey together. And you're going to experience some meditation, and we're going to practice being present and becoming more mindful, more aware of things that are going on inside of our body. And so if you want to take this 15-minute journey with me, I'm going to ask you to sit comfortably, lay comfortably, get comfortable in whatever position you're in, close your eyes, and just allow your body to breathe as it naturally would. Your body does this involuntarily. Your body breathes 24/7 without you having to give it any input whatsoever. And anytime your body breathes, it does so in the present moment. And so as we begin this meditation, again, I want you to be seated or laying down in a comfortable position, eyes closed. And I want you to allow your body to do what it does best and just breathe. There's no reason to change your breath. Your body knows exactly how much air, how much to inhale, how much to exhale, and when. It's got an intelligence that just does it. And as we begin this meditation, we're going to start to become a little bit more aware about all the nuances that take place in our body when we do something as simple as breathing. Again, the idea being that when you focus on your breath, it's an excellent way to become grounded in the present moment. Anytime you focus on your breath, you automatically bring yourself to the present moment. So as we do this practice, you're also going to notice with your new sense of awareness that your mind continuously tries to interject and interrupt you. It's going to create thoughts or images or memories or total sidebars of what's happening right now. It's going to attempt to take your attention somewhere else. When that happens, and it will happen, your only responsibility right now is to become aware of that thought. Become the observer of that thought. No judgment, no labels, just allow that thought to pass and then bring your attention back to the present moment in this meditation. And so as you're sitting there or lying there, I first want you to become more aware of your lungs involuntarily breathing. And what you'll notice is that your lungs inhale to a certain degree, they naturally pause, and then they naturally exhale. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to contribute at all. And if you really pay attention to the present moment, you're going to notice the sensation of the air flowing into your nose, hitting the ends of your nostrils, traveling down your nasal cavities and into your lungs. And you're going to feel your lungs expand. And at just the right time, you're going to notice that all of your lungs contract. And it forces that air out, back through your nasal cavities, through your nostrils. And if you pay close attention, you're going to notice that the air exiting your body is just a few degrees warmer than the air that was entering your body. You're going to notice little subtleties like your abdomen pushing in and out. You might notice your body tries to shift itself, become more comfortable. You might notice tension in your shoulders. You might notice tension or pain in your lower back. You might notice tightness in your feet or your calves. You might notice your brow, your forehead being tense. There's a lot of places people carry stress. Your goal right now is just to focus on your breath and all the nuances that are happening in your body as you do something as simple as breathe. And every time your mind interjects with a thought, an image, an alternate reality, a potential future, your only job is to become aware of the thought, observe the thought, allow it to gently pass, and bring your attention back to the present moment. I'm going to try that for about 30 seconds. And as you continue to sit there, focusing on your breath, I want you to redirect your attention to different parts of your body. When you're fully aware of the present moment, you're much more in tune, again, with the nuances of your body. So depending on where you're sitting or laying, maybe this is an opportunity to really notice the sensation of your feet resting on the floor or resting in your shoes. Maybe you notice all the sensations at the bottom of your feet as they make contact with the surface that supports you. Maybe you can bring your attention to your bottom. It's supporting at least half of your body's weight, and it's resting on this chair. Maybe you notice the sensations of your weight and your body supporting itself. Maybe you notice sensations in your lower back. Maybe you're noticing sore muscles, aches, pains. Maybe you're noticing feelings of relaxation. The idea is to become much more in tune with what's happening in the present moment. And anytime your brain intervenes, which it will, and it will continue to try to do, become the observer of the thought. Monitor the thought. Let it gently pass and bring your attention back to the present moment. Now I'm going to ask you to do something that's kind of strange. I'm going to ask you to open your eyes, and I'm going to ask you to extend your left or right hand in front of you. This appendage has been attached to your body for the duration of your life. But right now, you're going to look at this hand, and you're going to look at it without judgment, without labels. And you're just going to observe your hand in the present moment. See it for what it is. And anytime a thought intervenes or pops into your head, observe that thought, be aware of that thought, and allow it to pass by. My hope is that to some extent, it was almost as if you were seeing your hand as it truly is, without the influence of thought or positive or negative attributes, truly as it is. And maybe you noticed a number of little nuances. Maybe you saw your hand in high def. Maybe it almost looked like you were staring at somebody else's hand or something that was separate from you. And when you're ready, I want you to again try to look around your environment. Observe your environment. Only this time, you've had a little bit more time to practice the power of being the observer of your thoughts and bringing yourself back to the present moment. So observe your environment. Anytime your thoughts intervene, observe them, allow them to gently pass, and bring your attention back to the present moment. Okay, so that was a little bit of a guided meditation, helping you practice and becoming more present. My guess is that everybody on this webinar had a little bit of a different experience. Some people may have found the practice easy. Some people may have had a very difficult time calming their mind and bringing themselves back to the present moment. But again, in a message of hope, if you even had the ability to observe your thoughts, become aware of those thoughts, allow them to pass, and bring your attention back to the present moment, even if just for a few seconds, you were able to experience the power of being present. For a short period of time, your mind was not intervening, clouding, or influencing the way you feel and act. You were able to just be in the present moment. And so here's a couple of final thoughts. What I hope everybody was able to do today was be able to recognize the impact of your thoughts. At least understand that our thoughts have a tremendous influence on the way we think and feel. And I hope everybody today got the ability to practice being the observer of your thoughts, differentiating yourself from your thoughts, right? Separating yourself from your thoughts. You're externalizing your thoughts. They no longer consume you. You're literally seeing them as something different from you. And therefore, you have the ability to monitor, control, and change your thoughts, which we're going to touch on in just a second. As I said in the beginning, you have complete autonomy over your thoughts. It's one of the few things in this world that no one can change for you. It's one of the few things that you can do anything you want with. You have the ability to create whatever thoughts you want. And so here's my challenge to you. You need, should you choose to indulge this mission, you need to become the gardener of your thought garden. And what I mean by that is this. We'll use the analogy of your thoughts being seeds of your life. You can plant any seed you want in your garden. You are the soil. Your soil will sprout that seed. It will bud. You, as the gardener, have to choose which seeds, which thoughts you choose to nurture and allow to flourish in your garden. Garden's a perfect analogy, whether you plant tomatoes or an old poison called nightshade. The garden will grow either one. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are right. It depends on which seed you choose to indulge and nourish and allow to sprout in your life. The beauty of thoughts are you always have the ability to change that thought. And so, in summary, when you practice being present, you practice experiencing things in the absence of thought. As a result, you naturally experience less anxiety, less worry, less stress, less being completely consumed and overwhelmed by spiraling out of control thoughts. Will it happen to you again? Absolutely, which is why I encourage everybody to practice being present. When we end this webinar, walk out of your room, walk out of your environment, and look at the next room. Observe it for what it is without your mind putting labels on it. Life is going to throw you a curveball. Life is going to throw you adversity. It's guaranteed. Bet everything you own on it. Life is throwing us all a major curveball right now. The idea is to practice this ability of becoming presence when you're calm. And therefore, you increase the skill. It's a muscle, right? You exercise this ability to observe your thoughts, monitor your thoughts, allow them to pass, become present. Wouldn't bet my life on it, but I'd come close. Anybody that truly participated in that meditation probably felt very relaxed. They probably felt a sense of peace, calmness. They probably also had their thoughts attempt to intervene multiple times over, but as a general rule, you gave yourself the opportunity to be present and enjoy those peaceful benefits as a result. The final thought that I'm going to give you is this. When you have the ability to slow down your thoughts, observe your thoughts, monitor your thoughts, by law, you just gave yourself the ability and the permission to change those thoughts. Meaning, throughout this practice, I didn't ask you to put labels on the thoughts. I just asked you to observe them, become aware of them, and let them pass. Moving forward, if you have the ability to observe and monitor your thoughts, which everybody should have at least got glimpses of today, you also have the ability to pause, capture that thought, and change that thought, meaning be your own judge. if that thought is baseless, or if that thought doesn't benefit you, if that thought doesn't lead to an increased overall well-being of your life, that thought is working against you. And you are the only one that has the ability to change that thought. Here's a parting exercise, and then I'll get out of here. About 6 years ago, I wrote down every negative thought that I had about myself. The list was pretty long. And I did this in the left-hand column. I literally typed the complete opposite of that thought in the right-hand column. I think I had about 76 thoughts. What I did was I was teaching myself a new way to think about myself. If our default is to point out our negative, we have to literally be able to train ourselves, create new thought habits and how to think and feel about ourselves. When we think differently about ourselves, we automatically feel different about ourselves, and our actions are a reflection of that, which then reinforce the positive thoughts. I'm challenging everybody in here that struggles with negative thoughts to make a list of all their negative thoughts. And on the right-hand side, you literally write the complete opposite. What I think you will find is that the complete opposite is not that far-fetched. And if it's something you have a difficult time identifying with now, as you continue to change your thought processes to something more positive, you will see that begin to slowly unfold in your life. So 2 things. You've practiced presence today. You've developed the ability to at least stop your thoughts for a short period of time. And in doing so, you've allowed yourself to monitor those thoughts, become more aware of those thoughts, and then choose to change those thoughts if they're not providing a benefit to yourself. Okay, everybody. Thank you for attending. Bear with me for one more second. I apologize. If anybody would like to talk further, I do have some contact information up here that I would be happy to talk with you over the phone. There you go. Feel free to reach out or call. Thank you.
Is there some way I can send this to a family member?
Well, it's a good question. I recorded it. I have no idea how that's going to turn out, but I did record it today, so I'm not sure what Wellness Services is going to do with that. Probably edit me like crazy if they're smart. But if you would email me, or if you want to give me a call, I could give you some more information at a later date.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, everybody, take care of yourselves. Thanks for participating.